What if the operating system you trust every single day suddenly turned against you? Over 1 billion people rely on Windows to run their computers, and right now, hundreds of millions of those devices are stuck in a crisis nobody saw coming. Computers are crashing on boot. Others are freezing mid-task with blue screens. Core features like the Start menu, Taskbar, and File Explorer are simply refusing to open. This is not a conspiracy theory or an isolated glitch. This is Windows 11, and what began as a routine software update in September 2024 has spiraled into a cascading disaster that Microsoft still has not fully resolved. The update that was supposed to patch security vulnerabilities ended up breaking the very foundation of the operating system itself. And the scale of the problem continues to grow. More than 500 million devices running older versions of Windows cannot upgrade to Windows 11 due to strict hardware requirements. Another 500 million devices that can be upgraded have refused to do so, in part because users have watched this chaos unfold and decided to stay away. Meanwhile, those who did upgrade or were automatically pushed the update are discovering that their systems are now unstable, unreliable, and in some cases, completely unusable. This video will prove exactly what went wrong, why Microsoft fixes have failed to solve the core problems, and what this means for anyone who depends on Windows to work, study, communicate, or create. You need to know this now, because the next update could already be downloading to your device. When Microsoft first announced Windows 11 in June 2021, the company framed it as the most secure, stable, and modern operating system they had ever built. The pitch was simple. Windows 11 would use new hardware-based security features, including a trusted platform module chip and secure boot to protect users from malware and ransomware threats that had plagued older systems. The redesigned interface promised faster performance, smoother multitasking, and better integration with cloud services and mobile devices. Updates would be smaller, faster to install, and less disruptive than the notoriously frustrating Windows 10 update cycles. Microsoft even claimed that Windows 11 would give users more transparency and control over their data, with clearer categories for telemetry collection and enhanced privacy dashboards. The operating system was officially released in October 2021, but the rollout was carefully managed through what Microsoft calls safeguard holds. These are compatibility blocks designed to prevent devices with known hardware or software conflicts from upgrading until those issues are resolved. On paper, this sounds like a responsible approach. In practice, it meant that millions of users were left waiting for updates while others were automatically pushed into a system that was not ready for them. The major Windows 11.24 H2 update, released in October 2024, was supposed to bring new features and improved performance. Instead, it became the trigger for a wave of failures that exposed deep structural problems in how Microsoft tests, deploys, and supports its software. On September 26, 2024, Microsoft released Update KB5043145 for Windows 11 version 22 H2 and 23 H2. This was a preview update, meaning it was optional and intended for testing before being rolled into mandatory security patches. Within 24 hours, user reports began flooding Microsoft forums, Reddit, and tech support sites. Devices were entering reboot loops, attempting to restart over and over without successfully loading Windows. Others froze completely, displaying blue or green error screens that left the system unresponsive, and in some cases, the automatic repair tool launched after repeated restart attempts. But even that failed to fix the underlying problem. On systems with BitLocker encryption enabled, users were suddenly prompted to enter recovery keys they had never been told to save, effectively locking them out of their own data. Security researchers and tech journalists quickly identified a deeper problem. Microsoft had acknowledged in a support document that the update was causing local host connection failures, meaning applications hosted locally on the device could no longer connect to the network. This broke development tools, local web servers, databases, and other software that developers and IT professionals depend on daily. Microsoft released an emergency patch to fix the localhost issue, but warned that the hotfix could take more than 48 hours to appear on affected devices. In the meantime, users experiencing problems were told to check for updates and restart their PCs, even if no new updates were displayed. For millions of people, that advice did nothing. Then, in November 2024, Microsoft confirmed an even larger issue. Updates released after July 2024 for Windows 11 versions 24H2 and 25H2 had introduced a bug in XAML, the framework that powers the Windows user interface. This bug caused the operating system to fail to register certain XAML packages in time after installing updates. The result was catastrophic. The Start menu would not open when clicked, the taskbar disappeared entirely, the Settings app refused to launch. Some users logged in to see nothing but a blank screen, with no desktop, no icons, and no way to interact with the system. File Explorer crashed repeatedly, making it impossible to access files, folders, or drives. Microsoft admitted that almost all major Windows 11 core features were broken. You probably think that if you have not installed these specific updates, you are safe. But here's why that's wrong. Many Windows 11 devices are set to download and install updates automatically, whether you approve them or not. Microsoft has pushed certain updates even on systems where automatic updates were supposedly disabled. And because the XAML bug affects updates released after July 2024, anyone who kept their system current over the past several months could be running a broken version of Windows without realizing it until a critical feature fails at the worst possible moment. As reports of widespread failures mounted, regulatory and privacy advocacy organizations began taking notice. In the European Union, GDPR compliance officers have long scrutinized how Windows collects diagnostic and telemetry data. Windows 11 was designed to offer clearer separation between required and optional telemetry, which was supposed to support the GDPR principle of data minimization. However, when core system features fail and users are locked out of their devices, the question of data control becomes meaningless. You cannot manage privacy settings if you cannot access the Settings app in the first place. Advocacy groups like PIRG and consumer protection organizations in the United Kingdom have raised alarms about the security disaster unfolding as millions of users remain on Windows 10 because they either cannot upgrade or refuse to do so. The deadline for Windows 10 support ends in October 2025, leaving an estimated 400 to 600 million devices vulnerable to unpatched security exploits once Microsoft stops releasing updates. Security researchers have also documented specific vulnerabilities introduced in Windows 11.24H2. One exploit targets the cross-device service, allowing a low-privileged local attacker to replace a critical DLL file with a malicious version and achieve full system-level privileges. This type of privilege escalation vulnerability is especially dangerous on corporate networks, where a single, compromised device can become a gateway for attackers to move laterally across the entire infrastructure. Another security issue involves WerFault Secure. XE, a Windows error reporting tool that can be exploited to steal password hashes from system memory without triggering most antivirus software. Researchers from Zero Solarium demonstrated that by copying an older version of the file from Windows 8.1 and running it on Windows 11.24 H2, they could dump sensitive credential data to disk. These findings matter because they show that Windows 11 is not just unstable, it is also introducing new attack surfaces that did not exist in previous versions. The principle of data minimization and user consent, which GDPR and similar regulations demand, assumes that the operating system itself is trustworthy and functional. When the OS crashes repeatedly, fails to load core components, and exposes new privilege escalation paths, the entire compliance framework breaks down. Regulators have not yet issued formal fines or sanctions specifically tied to the Windows 11 update failures, but the erosion of user trust and the potential for data breaches on compromised systems create legal and financial risk for any organization deploying these updates at scale. Microsoft has not released the names of individual users who lost data or access to critical systems because of these updates, but the categories of risk are clear. Imagine a small business owner with 6 Windows 11 PCs all set to update automatically overnight. One morning, they arrive to find the Start menu will not open, the taskbar has disappeared, and File Explorer crashes every time they try to access client files. They have tax deadlines to meet, payroll to process, and invoices to send. Instead, they spend the entire day following workarounds that require editing the Windows registry, a process most non-technical users should never have to touch. The cost is not just time, but lost revenue, missed deadlines, and erosion of client trust. For a person working in healthcare, the stakes are even higher. Doctors, therapists, and medical office staff often use Windows-based electronic health record systems. If an update causes the Settings app to stop responding or File Explorer to crash, they cannot access patient charts, prescribe medications, or document treatment. If a privilege escalation vulnerability like the one found in the cross-device service is exploited on a hospital network, an attacker could gain access to sensitive patient data, violating HIPAA regulations, and exposing the organization to massive fines and legal liability. The same risk applies to legal professionals handling privileged attorney-client communications, financial advisors managing account credentials, and educators storing student records. These are not hypothetical scenarios invented to create fear. They are realistic, practical examples of what happens when the operating system that powers billions of dollars of global productivity, education, healthcare, and commerce fails at scale. The individuals affected may not have their names in a news article, but they are real people dealing with real consequences every single day. After the initial wave of failures, Microsoft removed several safeguard holds, blocking Windows 11.24H2 from installing on devices with certain fingerprint sensors. On November 8, 2024, Microsoft lifted the upgrade block related to fingerprint sensors that had become unresponsive, requiring users to install cumulative update KB50444284. The company also acknowledged the XAML bug and published workarounds involving manually restarting Windows Explorer or running PowerShell commands to re-register XAML packages. But none of these are simple fixes that an average user can execute confidently without risking further damage. Microsoft stated it is working on a permanent resolution, but as of late 2024, no timeline has been provided. Here is what is still broken. The privilege escalation vulnerability in the cross-device service can be exploited with low complexity and requires only low-level user privileges. The exploit code has been published publicly, and while Microsoft released a security patch in June 2025, the fact that such a fundamental flaw existed raises serious questions about code review and testing. The were fault secure, the XE vulnerability remains exploitable on systems running Windows 1124 H2, although Microsoft Defender now detects some attempts to abuse the tool. However, detection is not prevention. If an attacker uses obfuscation techniques or disables security software first, the exploit can still succeed. Your entire system is protected by security mechanisms that can be bypassed using publicly available tools and techniques. Even if you have installed every available patch, the underlying architecture of Windows 11 has introduced new weaknesses that were not present in Windows 10. Microsoft response has been reactive, not proactive. Then, navigate to Settings, Privacy and Security, and review app permissions. Disable camera, microphone, and location access for any apps that do not need those permissions. This limits potential damage if a privilege escalation exploit gives an attacker control over a background process. For advanced users, open File Explorer and type program data into the address bar. Check for a folder called cross-device. If it exists, verify your system has received the latest security updates by going to Settings, Windows Update, and clicking Check for Updates. For the XAML bug, if the Start menu, Taskbar, or Settings app will not open, press Ctrl, Shift plus Escape to open Task Manager. Find Windows Explorer, select it, and click Restart. This may temporarily restore functionality, but it does not fix the root cause. Your operating system does not just work for you anymore, it works for the company too. When the system fails, you lose access to your work, your files, and your ability to function in a digital world. The companies that build these systems issue patches and move on to the next feature release. You are left troubleshooting, restoring backups, and hoping the next update does not break everything again. You have two choices. Option 1, take 5 minutes right now to pause updates, minimize telemetry, and review your app permissions using the steps outlined earlier. Option 2, share this video with one person you know who uses Windows and might not be aware of these risks. Drop a comment below and tell me which option you chose. Next time, we are investigating another major tech platform that is collecting far more data than most users realize. If you want to stay ahead of the next crisis before it hits your device, subscribe now. The update that breaks your system could already be downloading. Like, share, and subscribe so you're always first to know when big tech news drops.